This conference will now be recorded.
So what we are discussing in the last session, we discussed about transformations part.
Yes.
Yes, no. I think I'm supposed to start with a new topic of exceptions. Devender, Anu, is it audible?
Yes, Sujit, it's audible.
Because these exceptions require a lot of what do you call I mean discussion basically.
Okay.
That's why I want everyone to respond to my questions. Sometimes you may feel that it is very easy to understand. You may think that you are in a right direction, but sometimes it will go in a different way. Okay. So for that reason, to ensure that we are in a same page. So if I ask a question, I mean repeated questions may be there, will be there, just to ensure that you are in a right track. Okay, so please be attentive, and also please be answer to my questions. Okay, that's what expected. Shall we start?
Yes,
Good to
please.
go. Okay, so we are going to talk about exceptions. Okay, what is the difference between exception and error?
Error is something which is unexpected, and to handle those errors or let us know, we use exceptions.
I guess error would crash the system.
Crash the system. Okay, simply can't I say error like syntax errors? For example, while developing the application, you have written something wrong, automatically it populates that this is an error. So is it not an error? Right? Syntax errors can be represented or tagged under a error. Exception, you know that it may go, it may occur, still you proceed, and you are going to catch that as well. For example, if you are connecting with a you have written a logic to consume a soap application. Example, okay, your logic is correct. When you deploy the application, you send a request to the soap application. That soap application is down. You will be getting what error or exception in that case? You will be getting what error or exception? It is an
Normally, an error.
exception.
Okay.
It is an exception, not an error, right?
But
Runtime. Uh,
until unless we normally raise an exception for that error, it's an error only, right?
we will not raise, no. We will not raise an exception, no. Raise in the sense.
I mean to say, like somewhere in the code or where like we are calling the SOAP application, the SOAP API.
Okay, I didn't get that.
Normally,
Sorry for that.
no, no. If you're calling is SOAP application or API, then normally we can have it from our end as well. No? Like if some exception error happens at if something like this that is
That is
down.
called catching the exception. That is called
Okay.
catching the exception. Once exception occur, how to handle that? That is called writing an alternate logic or writing catching the exception. So we are talking about first what is the exception. Once the exception occurs, how to catch? Then we'll talk about that as well. Yeah. So first, if the
Yeah.
third party server is down, you are going to get some message. What type of message you will get? You will be getting a exception message. So cannot dispatch, we are not able to send the request, cannot dispatch the request, meaning is what? Unable to send the request. So that is an exception because you nothing fault at your end. But when you are writing the logic itself, you may think this application may work, may not work. Get yes or no? Right? If it is working good, I want to proceed to the next components and next process. If at all it is not working, then I want to use a fallback server. So that is called catching the exception. Writing an alternate logic to the existing logic, you will call that as a catching a exception. Okay. Unfortunately, in Mule 4, we will refer error and exception both are same. Okay. So that is why we'll call that EH in the flow as a error handler, error handling section. Otherwise, you can call that as. Okay. So let's see. We are going to discuss about Mule 4 exceptions, not Mule 3 exceptions. Why I specified like this? Because Mule 3 exceptions, Mule 3 exceptions around 5 to 6 strategies were there. Those are given under Mule 4 in a easy manner. They redesign this entire exception concept in Mule 4, I can say. For example, they have given few strategies in Mule 4, straight away strategies like on error propagate, on error continue. Trust me, if you know the difference between the propagate and continue, trust me, you are through with the exception handling. You are through with the Mule 4 exception handling, I can say. These two are main pillars for exception handling in a Mule 4. So on error, once the error occurs, how that error event should behave, that is nothing but a propagate or a continue. Okay, we'll see in detail about this too. Along with
What's the
that,
difference, Sujin?
I will tell not in one liner. I will tell with an
Acha.
example. Yeah. So
Okay.
there is one more error handler. We will call this as a global error handler, applications default error handler, or a error handler. Anything is same. Okay. And one more mule default error handler. These are the terminologies which you are going to see frequently. Which you are going to see frequently. Okay. Let's start. Just to follow my instructions. It is crystal clear. I'm going to explain that crystal clearly. Just you need to try to understand. Okay. So let's take, we have one flow. We have one flow. You know flow contains three parts, right?
Yes.
Source, process. Till now
Error.
we didn't fix this. Till now we have didn't touch this error handling section. Okay. Now what type of configuration we can do in the source part? Listener configurations, which will listen to the request from the client, converts into mule
Mule
event.
event.
That event will be processed by the processors. Let's take, there are three processors in this flow. Okay. Now my listener will listen for the request, converts into event. Event is processed by processor A, and updated event is sent to processor B. Okay. Now that processor B, when it is processing that event, there is some exception. As I understand, there is some exception. 1 second, give me 1 second. Yeah, I'm sorry. So where I stopped, there is an exception at a processor B level. Okay. So you need to follow the steps what I'm going to script here. The first step, whenever there is an exception, understand there is an error object got created. What will be created? Error object.
Object.
So this error object can be called as error event. Till now I have written in the green color, right? It's a success event. Once I got an exception, that will be treated as a error event. Okay. So from here onwards, it will be treated as a error event. Okay. Next, once the error event got created, that error event contains, that means error is an object I told, right? That error object contains multiple properties which describes about that error, multiple properties. Out of that, two important properties are description of that error. One more is type of an error. So error information will be given under the properties by using a description, by using a error type. So description of what type? What is the data type I can assign to this description? Description means some text. So what data type can be assigned for this? Data type.
String.
String.
String. Error type is an object type. It's an object type. Okay. So once the error object got created, that error object information, that means entire information along with these two properties, there are four more properties. Entire all the four properties, basically the entire error info will be logged on console. You can see entire error information there. Third step. What is the third step? Once error information is logged, the subsequent processors will not be processed. Will not be processed. Next, if the next processor is not executing the event, who will execute this event now? Who will execute? That error event will check in the local error handler. For what? Is there any alternate logic is written in the error handling section or not? Okay. That alternate logic I can configure by using on error propagate handler or on error continue handler. If you don't configure anything, if you don't write any logic there, so who will catch this exception? That means you need to understand, when I say catching the exception, the event should be processed by some processors. Someone should process that event, right? So who will process that? If no error handler is configured in local error handler of a flow, mule default error handler will catch the exception. So understood? Everyone, please understood? Please understand, guys. If there is no local error handler is configured, the error event will be catched by mule default error handler. So when I say mule default error handler will catch the exception, what is the meaning? It is rethrowing the error to the next level. So when I say mule default error handling catching the exception means rethrow the error to next level. So what do you mean by next level in this case? If I have only one flow, the next level will be a HTTP listener. If I have multiple flows, from if you get exception at a child flow, there will be no listener, right? So it will be go back to the main flow. Okay, so that is why I used common word called next level. Okay, so when I say mule default error handler catching the exception is nothing but rethrowing the error to the next level. Next, when it is rethrown to the listener, my listener will give a response. Listener will give a response body to the client. What is the response body? You know, under the HTTP listener, there are two parts. One is if it is success, one is if it is response. What is the response if we are getting an error event at finally? By default,
Error.
it is written in this syntax. Output text slash plain. 3 hyphens as a separator. What will be the body? Error dot description. This is a by default syntax written in the listener response. If it is success event by default, what will be the syntax? May not, right? If it is success. If it is an error by default, error dot description. Is it clear to everyone? Guys, is it clear? Let me summarize. If I get an exception at one of the processor level, error object will be created. That means indirectly error event will be created. That entire error information we can see in the console. That will be logged. And subsequent processors right after the where we got an exception, next processors will not get executed. Then who will execute that? In the local error handler, if we have any logic, that will try to execute. There are also some conditions to fulfill. So as of now, they can execute. If nothing is configured in the local, then mule default error handler will catch that exception. That means that will catch the error event. So mule default error handler will process that error event. Mule default error handler we cannot see. It is a default operation, default action I can say. Okay. So when I say default action, it will rethrow the error to the next level. Next level in this case, listener. Listener will give the response to the client. What response? From this property, one of the properties description, right? So we'll write a data view expression in the error object. I want to fetch the value for description. Error dot description. It will give the response body to the client. Clear? Just analyze for 2 minutes.
So how do we know whether it's a success or an error?
When after deploying the application,
Yes.
you will be getting exception status right there.
So every time we'll have to check for error dot description. If it is
No, no,
null or empty, then we assume it as success.
no. In the console, in the logs, you will find out. See, generally in any programming language, how you will come to know whether there is an error or not? By seeing the logs,
First,
right? By seeing the logs, you will come to know. In the console, it will throw the entire error information I told. Once it is deployed, you will be getting the error information in the console, and you will see the status code also will be changed in the postman if you are checking that.
yeah. What would be the status there?
Different depends on the different depends on the exception type you are getting.
I see. So
Mostly common
Postman.
one is 500 server error. Common thing
Okay.
I'm talking about.
Because the end user may not have access to console. Like Postman may not have
Why
access to
client?
console.
Why client? As a developer, I mean, since if you want to get the data as a client, how you will come to know, how he will come to know from the postman perspective. From the postman, when
Okay.
he send a request, he will get some response, right?
Yes.
You will decide at the development of API what response, if it is an error, you want to display to the client. Client will ask, Okay, if it is there is if there is no response, that response I want to get back. If there is no response, what is the error? What type of error it is? That information we can configure in the response body in the development area.
Okay.
Analyze for 2 minutes. You start the practical. And one more thing, go to the AnyPoint Studio and import one project. There is one use case. Quickly go through the use case. 5 minutes I'll give quickly. 001 exception start. Import that project, please. Once complete, let me know.
Yeah, I'm done.
Yeah, I
Done?
put it.
Yeah. Just go through the use case once.
Sujit, what is this NS and NS0 on the transform message?
NS is nothing but a namespace. This namespace means XML contains namespace, right? XML namespace. That means this so and so XML belongs to so and so domain. Just to represent this XML belongs to so and so namespace. Just you can represent like that. You can ignore that as well if you there is no impact.
Okay. Yeah, looking at, I think we are setting some variable, it calling from the query parameters, and if it's checking if it is present in that HP or Apple, in each HP or Mac, uh, that query parameter whatever we are giving, and it's transforming the name whatever we give, and I think it's calling uh, the API.
There is a validation config. I guess it has been written to raise an exception. If the
Purposefully,
product
yes.
name, yes, if product name contains HP or Mac, then
Ah,
raise an error.
correct.
So validation is true validation. I have not been through this validation config so far, but I guess this would cause if the product name is either HP or Mac. So
Okay,
if
let's
not
start.
this,
I will explain that so that you will go in
yeah.
a single page. Hi Anu, no response today.
Yeah, yes, it is. Yeah,
Listening to us.
I think the general expression will follow. Like if there is HP or Mac, then it will proceed with the flow. Otherwise, it will throw invalid product name. I
Correct.
think.
Yeah. So since I have a listener, let me deploy this application meanwhile, just in order to save the time. So I have a listener which is listening on 8081 slash error is the path slash error, and also expecting product name equal to HP. For example, that is the query parameter sent. So from the query parameter, we are setting the variable. By extracting that, we are setting the variable product name. So end of the set variable, we have one query parameter, one variable that is sent to flow reference, which is invoking validate and transform flow. So in that validate and transform flow, what is the first component which is executed by the, which is executing the event is to
Validation.
validate. It is an is true validator. It's a boolean kind of an operator, I can say. Is true is a boolean kind of an operator, which will give true or a false. If it is true, that means the is true validator is success. If the expression is failed, I can say is true validator is failed. So according to this expression, what it says, it is trying to extract a variable value. What is the variable value which is stored from the query parameter HP, right? If that HP is a part of that array, then there is no exception. For purposefully, if I send any variable value like this, then not part of the array. So is true validate is a failed. On error, what is the message you want to display? You can write that message in the message box. I have written invalid product name if it is failed. Okay. So what is the next step? Assume later, for discussion sake, understand is true validate is success. Then the event will go to transform message. So what is the transform message here? You know, if you want to consume a soap application by using a consume connector, there are two ways. We can send an input to the consume connector two ways in XML format. What are those two? One is by using a template, XML template, by using a parse template, you know that part, right? Second way is what? By using a transformer. So in this transformer, what is the final payload value? What is the final payload value? You are able to see there, right? It is
Product
an
name
X.
as a JSON.
Product name.
XML format, correct? Get product by name request, and in that key value pair, what is the key? Name is an attribute. Value I'm extracting from the product name. That means where's dot product name, where from the variable. So finally, I'm giving an XML tag as an payload value, which is moved to transfer message invoking a get product by name flow. Okay, and get product by name flow is using a consume connector. First component is what? Consume connector. You know, consume connector will, I mean, it is consume the soap applications. It is used to consume a soap application. So the soap application will expect input in XML format, right? Am I giving input in XML format to this or not?
Yes.
By using a transformer in the before flow, the validate and transform flow, we have done the same thing. So that is the payload value which is given as an input to consume connector. Then once it is success, then the logger will be displayed whatever the payload, and finally converting into JSON format. I already deployed this application. Let me give a request with an invalid name. Now you should follow the steps whatever I told. What is the first step? What is the first step? Just for one time, I will draw the picture. From here onwards, you need to understand. Where I got an exception?
The
At a consumer.
validation and
Sorry. Where I got an exception? At a is true validator level. How you know? As you asked earlier, how you know now?
Like we have that message in the read.
As I told, first error object will be created. At a is true validator, one error object got created, right? So these are the important properties. Out of that, first property is what? Message. That means description. What is the description? What is the message I want to display? It is written like invalid product name. That's what I have written in the validator. And what is the error type? Validation and invalid boolean. I forgot to tell one more thing actually. We can identify the error by using a error type. So what is that error type? And in that error type, what are the main area to identify? So error type is classified into two. One is namespace, one is identifier. So namespace represents component. At which component level? If I get an exception at a HTTP listener level, HTTP is the component. If I get an exception at a consume connector level, what is the module for that? Consume connector module name?
web service consumer.
Web service consumer. That is the namespace. Okay. So now is2 is a validator. So validation is the namespace. Okay. So request connector, I got an exception. So HTTP again, it's a namespace. So I hope you understand what is a namespace, right? So at this, when this web service consumer, there is a consume connector. If I get an exception at a consume connector level, I may get a multiple type of exception. Bad request, cannot dispatch error, like that many requests may come. So exactly what type of exception I got, that you can identify by using a identifier. If I get cannot dispatch, you need to understand my application is unable to send a request to the third party application. Okay, it is unable to send that because the third party server is down. Okay, now I have validation is having only one identifier, invalid boolean. Boolean is true or false. It is failed. So what is the namespace I got? Validation, and identifier is invalid boolean. So every error type will be identified by two factors. What are those? Namespace and a identifier. These are two important properties. So let's come back to the discussion. At each true validator, I got an exception. This is the first step. Error event will be created, right? Next, entire error information is logged onto the console. That is the second step. Third step, subsequent processors. Subsequent process will not get execute. So who will process this event now? The event will check in the local error handling section. But any case, I have written any error handler row, right? So mule default error handler will catch. Will catch means will rethrow to the next level. So can I say now I got an exception at validate and transform level? That means the flow reference level in the main flow. If you think in a main flow perspective, in this flow, I got error at a flow reference processor level. Flow reference processor level. So all the steps to be repeated. All the steps to be repeated. So what is the error event we got? All this information is part of that error event which is given to the main flow. Correct? So not required to create an error event, and also it will not log any information on the console because already for the same error information is logged onto the console. Next, subsequent processors will not get executed. Then the error event will check in the local error handler of a main flow. Here also I didn't configure any. So mule default error handler will catch that exception, means rethrow the error to the listener. So what is the listener response finally? What is the listener response? If you open the HTTP listener, under the HTTP listener there is something called responses. Under that, what is the default body? Error dot description, and a text slash plain is the output format. That is what the response body I got. Error dot description means error dot message. Understand? Yes, no? Is it clear, guys?
Yeah.
Yes.
Now I don't want a description, I want to check for error type. Error type is an object type, right? We cannot display in the plain text format. Which format I can see? We can use a Java or a JSON, which will be in a readable format. Now let's restart this application. Let's close the console. This started. Let me give a request. What is the response? See, is it in object format? JSON object format? What is the namespace? Validation is the namespace. What is the identifier? Invalid boolean. So for all the namespace, the parent namespace is mule, and for all the identifiers, the parent identifier is any. So what is this any? So errors are classified into two. One is any type and one is critical type. Simply you can remember what comes under any type means any error which you can handle at your application level, that comes under any type. So cannot dispatch, I am able to handle at my application level. I may write alternate logic for that. It falls under any. If I use a transform message, if I write a data view expression wrong, When it says expression as an error type, that is comes under any. Like invalid boolean comes under any, right? So then what comes under critical, which you are not able to handle, which is not in your hand, like fatal errors, memory outage. What else? Fatal errors, memory outage. What else? Which is not in your hand. Overload. So this all comes under a critical type of errors. Okay. So which type of errors comes under any type? Any error which is at your application level and you are able to handle, that comes under a any type. Is it clear, guys? If you remember that 6 steps, any type of exception handling, sorry, any type of logic you can easily understand, and you can guess what type of exception may occur. If it occurs, how to write an alternate logic at your error handling section. All these things you will understand very easily. Okay. Now, um, just go to the PPT what I've given you in the softwares folder once. I've given you in the softwares folder. If you go to there, can you please go to the softwares folder? In that, I have given you exception handling mule for originals. Is it given or not? Please confirm.
Yeah, given.
Yeah. So we have 5 minutes time. Please go through the slides and till slide number 7. Please go through the 7 slides and let me know if you have any issues and or questions on that.
What's the
Yeah.
PDF name? Sorry.
In the softwares folder, what document I have given? It's PPT, not what document. Sorry, exception handling mule for originals.
Exception handling mule 4. Yes, originals.ppt.
Yeah.
I got it.
Tomorrow we'll discuss about what is a propagate, what is a continue, differences between those two, and we'll discuss about how to do the error mapping and how to configure the global error handler. Okay. Please go to the PPT. If you have any questions, ask me.
Sujit, on the second slide, in the error handler, we have again event processor, right? Is that uh, something like how we are going to handle the exceptions?
Second, yeah, here, this is a flow. Let's take that this is the flow, and that we have a processor. In that processor, we got an exception. Next, it will check in the I mean, there is a disconnect between the next process. Then it will check in the local error handler. If there is any error handler, how it works?
Okay, mean to say that error on error continue or on error propagate, whatever we are going to discuss.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Okay.
Sujit, what are the possible actions we can perform in error handler? Like, can we have flow references or choice routers as
Any
well here?
logic, any
Okay,
logic you can write there. Like it's an alternate flow. You can simply treat like it's an alternate for existing flow.
okay. So that the message event still remains the same here.
Same. Event will be the same. From there, you will convert that. I mean, we'll treat that as an error event. Whenever there is an error occurred, from there onwards, we will treat that same event as an error event.
So meaning that we will not have access to the message event. It doesn't exist anymore.
It is there. It is the same like a success. Just now, till now, successful scenarios what we have seen, same way. But the behavior is only different if it is an error. Behavior means the next processor generally, that will get executed, correct? The event will be executed by the without disconnection of the flow. If there is any error, we will treat that error event. So that's why we will come to the error block, and whatever the logic present in the error block that will get executed.
Okay.
It will take a diversion to the error block instead of straight way.
So at the end of the flow, let's say I have uh, multiple flows in a sequence, like a hierarchy of flows. Flow A is calling flow B, flow B is calling flow C.
Okay,
So an
whatever
error
it is.
occurred in, yeah, an error occurred at flow C level. So
Hmm.
it will drill back to flow B, then flow A, and
Exactly same.
it generates a response, error response.
Correct, correct. Through HTTP listener only the response should go out.
Okay. So can we have this hierarchy also in our error event? Like when we see the any general error in our programming languages, it's a stack where we'll know where the error actually occurred and how it's been called, from what level it's been called.
What level it been called
Like
in
for
sense?
example, I have an object, customer object, which invokes an object. Then object will try to fire a message email. An error occurs in email, so the stack will, the general programming language stack will give me an information stating that the error occurred at a mailing component, which is invoked by the products, which is again invoked by customers. A detail
That
level,
no. Here it is simple, which can be identified from the namespace and identifier only. Any error. Only out of the six elements only we can identify the what type of error, where we got that error as well.
okay.
Because these are routers. These are components. In Mule 4 all are components and connectors, right? So yeah.
Yeah. And is it possible that even though in error handler we can return a successful status?
No.
Okay.
Okay. I will talk about that tomorrow. There is a
Okay.
use case here. That is called continue handler. We will discuss in tomorrow sessions. Okay. Otherwise, about the continue, propagate, and all. Okay. I will stop here.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.